Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered why some relationships leave you feeling unseen, unheard, and undervalued no matter how much you give? Today we're uncovering the 4 silent habits that slowly kill your value in a man's eyes. These aren't loud red flags, they're subtle patterns that often go unnoticed, but have a powerful impact on how you're treated. Recognizing them can completely shift the way you show up in love and help you reclaim your self-worth. So, let's dive into the topic. And if you're ready to protect your energy, elevate your standards, and attract the respect you truly deserve, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what matters most. There's a silent habit many people fall into without realizing the damage it does. They apologize for who they are. Not in the traditional sense of saying, "I'm sorry," but in the subtle ways they shrink themselves. They downplay their passions, water down their opinions, and second-guess their instincts to appear easier to like. They sense even a hint of disapproval and immediately recalibrate themselves to fit a mold they think will be more appealing. But in doing so, they send a message that their truth isn't good enough. The world reads that energy before a word is spoken. Confidence isn't loud, but insecurity whispers too. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room to be the most powerful, but you do need to stand tall in your truth. When you start giving up pieces of yourself to win approval, you trade authenticity for acceptance, and in that transaction, your value quietly begins to erode. There's something deeply magnetic about someone who knows who they are and isn't afraid to show up as that person. It's not about arrogance or ego, it's about grounded certainty. When you walk into a room believing you belong, people feel it. That energy doesn't beg for attention, it commands respect. But when you dilute who you are to avoid stepping on toes, you become forgettable. Not because you don't have something to offer, but because you've tucked it all away in an attempt to be liked. Being liked is easy. You can smile, nod, agree, but being respected requires you to be real, even when it's uncomfortable. You don't have to be combative or controversial to be authentic. You just have to stop apologizing for your preferences, your quirks, your desires. That's where real value begins to shine. You can't build deep connection while wearing a mask. You might maintain peace temporarily, but the cost is your own emotional exhaustion. You end up playing a role instead of being present. And the worst part is, when someone connects with the version of you that's filtered and edited, the relationship isn't actually with you, it's with the image you projected. Over time, that becomes unsustainable. You feel unseen, unheard, and ultimately unfulfilled. That sense of disconnect isn't because others don't care. It's because you never really let them see the real you. The fear of being too much, too opinionated, too emotional leads to a watered-down version of yourself that lacks impact. You're not meant to be everyone's cup of tea. You're meant to be real enough to attract those who value what you truly bring. When you apologize for your presence, you begin to subconsciously expect rejection. You anticipate being too much for someone, so you tone it all down preemptively. You say less, laugh softer, speak slower, but in that restraint, you lose the natural rhythm of who you are. You're not giving people a chance to see your energy at full volume. And more importantly, you're not giving yourself permission to enjoy the moment. The more you rehearse your personality to avoid mistakes, the more you create distance between your inner world and your outer expression. That internal tug-of-war builds anxiety and chips away at your confidence. Authenticity isn't reckless, it's brave. It says, "This is me, and I trust that's enough." That's the version of you people truly connect with. You weren't designed to be digestible for everyone. Some people won't like your intensity, your fire, your ambition, and that's not only okay, it's necessary. Every no you receive from someone who doesn't vibe with your truth is a filter clearing the path for a yes that matters. When you pretend to be someone you're not, you delay that alignment. You might gain temporary comfort, but you lose long-term connection. Real value comes from showing up without fear of rejection, because you know rejection isn't a reflection of your worth, it's simply information. It tells you who's meant to walk beside you and who isn't. You don't need to explain yourself to be understood. You need to express yourself to be known. Let go of the urge to shrink. People respect what is real. They may not always agree with it, but they feel it. When someone owns their truth without trying to convert anyone else to it, it leaves an impression. Think about the people you admire most. Chances are, it's not because they were always agreeable or inoffensive. It's because they were unapologetically themselves. You saw something bold in them that made you want to do the same. And yet so often, we deny ourselves that same boldness. We fear being judged, criticized, or misunderstood. But what if the real tragedy isn't being misunderstood? It's never letting people see you clearly in the first place. When you live in constant adaptation, you teach others to only respond to the version of you they've met. Break the cycle. There is an incredible strength in softness when it comes from a place of self-respect. You can be kind, generous, and open-hearted without being a doormat. You can listen without abandoning your own voice. You don't have to be hard to be strong. You just have to be rooted. And that rootedness comes from embracing who you are, flaws and all. When you stop apologizing for your emotions, your boundaries, your preferences, you begin to communicate with clarity and grace. People don't have to guess what matters to you. They can feel it. Your presence becomes more grounded, more trustworthy. You radiate calm, not because you're trying to please everyone, but because you've made peace with yourself. Relationships that are built on performance are fragile. The moment you stop performing, they fall apart. That's why being honest from the beginning matters so much. When you lead with truth, you attract people who resonate with it. That doesn't mean you'll never be challenged. It means you'll be seen. The goal isn't to impress someone into liking you. It's to inspire connection through honesty. That starts by releasing the idea that you have to earn love by editing yourself. You are most magnetic when you are most you. That includes the messy, the passionate, the uncertain parts. All of it is valuable, not just the polished highlights. You don't need to be perfect to be enough. You just need to be real. Start paying attention to the little ways you diminish yourself. Do you laugh at jokes you don't find funny? Do you nod in agreement when your gut says otherwise? Do you silence your instincts because you don't want to seem difficult? These aren't just small sacrifices. Over time, they become a habit of self-abandonment. And that habit sends a loud message to the world. What I want doesn't matter, but it does matter. Your needs, your voice, your desires, they all have weight. Start reclaiming that weight. The world adjusts to how you carry yourself. Walk like you belong in every room you enter, not because someone else told you so, but because you've chosen to believe it for yourself. You don't owe anyone a diluted version of who you are. The right connections, romantic or otherwise, will never require you to minimize your light. In fact, they'll celebrate it. They'll lean in when you speak boldly. They'll admire the way you stand your ground with grace. But none of that can happen if you're busy second-guessing your worth before they've even gotten to know you. Stop pre-rejecting yourself. Let people experience the full, unfiltered version of who you are. If that scares some away, good. It means your filter is working. The people who stay, the ones who see you, hear you, and love you as you are, those are the connections that add real value to your life. And it all starts with the decision to stop apologizing for being exactly who you are. There's something beautifully vulnerable about wanting to share your life with someone, but when that desire turns into dependency, the dynamic shifts. It starts small, checking your phone a little too often, reshuffling your schedule to make space, or feeling anxious when you haven't heard from them. Slowly, the center of your emotional world moves outside of you and lands in their hands. Without realizing it, your happiness starts to revolve around their attention, their validation, their presence. That might feel romantic in the moment, but it places your sense of value on unstable ground. When someone becomes your emotional anchor before they've earned that role, the balance of the relationship tilts. They hold the power and you hold the hope. And in doing so, you risk making them your emotional sun while you orbit quietly in the background. The danger in making someone your priority too early is that you give them VIP access to parts of your life they haven't yet proven they can handle. your time, your energy, your emotional intimacy. These are sacred things. When you give them away before truly knowing someone, you're not being generous, you're being reckless with your own value. Relationships aren't built through emotional shortcuts. They're built through pacing, through shared experiences, through moments that test mutual respect and character. When you give too much, too soon, it creates an imbalance that often leads to resentment later. You end up expecting a level of investment in return that they're not ready or willing to give. That's when disappointment sets in. Not because they changed, but because they never signed up for the level of intensity you silently offered. It's easy to mistake intensity for intimacy. The constant texting, the long late-night conversations, the rapid emotional connection, it all feels so deep. But real intimacy takes time to grow roots. It's not about how fast you connect. It's about how well you're seen and how safe you feel being fully yourself. If you're always available, always giving, always adjusting to make someone more comfortable, you're not building intimacy, you're building dependence. And that's not the same thing. True connection requires two people showing up as whole individuals, not one person pouring all of themselves into someone who's still figuring out whether they're even ready to receive it. You can't manufacture closeness by over-giving. All you do is set the bar so low for how you're treated that even breadcrumbs feel like a feast. When someone becomes the center of your emotional life prematurely, you start abandoning your own routines. The things that used to light you up, your friendships, your hobbies, your personal goals, begin to fade into the background. It's subtle at first. You skip a workout to take a call. You cancel plans with a friend to be available. You delay your personal goals because they need support. Before long, you start measuring your worth by how much space you take up in their life, instead of how much joy you cultivate in your own. That's when the imbalance becomes dangerous, because if they pull away, it doesn't just hurt, it shakes your foundation. Your emotional identity has become so entwined with their presence that you forget who you were before they arrived. Your life should be full before someone else walks into it. They can complement it, enhance it, even challenge it, but they shouldn't complete it. You're not a half waiting to be made whole. You are a whole person with dreams, priorities, and a vision for your life that stands whether someone stays or goes. When you operate from that foundation, you attract people who see your strength, not your need. That strength isn't about being emotionally unavailable, it's about being emotionally secure. You're not looking to be saved, you're looking to share the ride with someone headed in the same direction. And when someone sees that, they're far more likely to respect your value than if they feel they're your only source of happiness. One of the most powerful things you can do is maintain your individuality within a relationship. Keep showing up for your own life. Go to that class, take that trip, spend time with people who fill you up. Make decisions based on what aligns with your path, not just what keeps someone else comfortable. When you do that, you show that your world doesn't revolve around their attention. It shows that while you care deeply, you're still anchored in yourself. That kind of confidence is rare and it's attractive. It says, I want you, but I don't need you to breathe. And that creates a space for mutual respect instead of silent pressure. Because when someone feels like your happiness depends on them, it can become suffocating. Many people confuse love with sacrifice, believing that the more you give up for someone, the more meaningful the connection becomes. But giving up your life to make room for someone else isn't noble. It's self-abandonment. You shouldn't have to erase parts of yourself to be loved. Real connection allows both people to expand, not contract. When you're constantly folding your needs to make someone stay, you're not building love, you're building quiet resentment. It builds in the background, showing up as irritability, sadness, or emotional fatigue. You were never meant to disappear into someone else's life. You were meant to stand beside them as equals, walking your own path together, not tangled. Setting boundaries isn't about pushing someone away. It's about creating the right conditions for sustainable connection. When you protect your time, energy, and emotional bandwidth, you're not being distant, you're being self-respecting. You're saying, I value myself enough to not give away everything just because I feel something. That kind of maturity invites deeper connection. It teaches people how to treat you not through ultimatums, but through consistency. You don't have to beg for time, affection, or effort when someone sees your standards clearly. You just have to stay rooted in them. And if someone can't meet them, it's not a loss, it's clarity. At the end of the day, the most valuable relationships are built on interdependence, not codependence. That means two people who are strong on their own, choosing to come together, not because they need to, but because they want to. That kind of bond allows for growth, challenge, and deep emotional connection without the weight of emotional responsibility falling on one person's shoulders. It's not about constant availability, it's about emotional generosity that flows both ways. When you show up whole, you inspire the same from others. You stop chasing, proving, performing. You start receiving, connecting, and thriving. Letting someone in doesn't require losing yourself in the process. You're allowed to care deeply without collapsing your boundaries. You're allowed to want connection without making someone else your entire reason for being. The strongest love is built when both people have their own sense of purpose, their own inner compass, and their own life they're proud of, before the relationship even begins. When your emotional fulfillment is self-sourced, everything else becomes a bonus, not a lifeline. That's how you hold your value. That's how you stay grounded in a world that constantly tempts you to abandon yourself for the hope of being chosen. The truth is, you don't need to be chosen to be worthy. You already are. There's a quiet kind of erosion that happens when you repeatedly tolerate disrespect in the name of being understanding. It doesn't always start with something dramatic. It begins with letting the small things slide. Dismissive tone here, a broken promise there. You tell yourself, they're just going through something, or it's not worth the fight. Before you know it, your standards begin to shift. What once would have been unacceptable starts to feel normal. And because you care, you rationalize their behavior, making excuses on their behalf. You lead with empathy, which is beautiful, but you forget to direct some of that empathy toward yourself. That's when self-respect quietly starts slipping through your fingers. Being empathetic doesn't mean abandoning your boundaries. Understanding someone's struggles doesn't require you to absorb the consequences of their poor behavior. It's possible to hold space for someone's pain without letting them trample on your peace. But when you consistently put their emotional well-being above your own, you create a dangerous imbalance. You teach them that your comfort is optional while theirs is sacred. And that kind of dynamic doesn't heal, it repeats. The longer you let someone get away with treating you poorly, the more permission you give them to continue. It's not about being cold-hearted. It's about not setting yourself on fire just to keep someone else warm. There's a powerful difference between compassion and self-sacrifice. Compassion listens, cares, and supports, but it also knows when to step back. Self-sacrifice, on the other hand, puts your needs at the bottom of the list and calls it love. That's not love. That's emotional martyrdom disguised as patience. When you constantly forgive behavior that hurts you, hoping things will get better, you're not being strong, you're being slowly broken. You start to silence your instincts, you second-guess your reactions, you begin to wonder if maybe you're just too sensitive. But your sensitivity is not the problem. The problem is that you're staying in situations where your emotional safety is consistently threatened. People reveal who they are, not in their words, but in how they handle your boundaries. Disrespect doesn't always show up as screaming or insults. Sometimes it's subtle. A joke that goes too far, repeated behavior you've said hurts you, or an apology that feels more like manipulation than remorse. And yet, because you care, you want to believe they'll change. So you stay, you hope, you keep giving chances, even when every new chance chips away at your self-esteem. The issue isn't just the disrespect, it's what happens to you when you normalize it. You lose your sense of worth. You forget that relationships are supposed to feel safe. Loyalty is a beautiful quality, but it should never be used as a leash. When you remain loyal to someone who consistently disrespects you, what you're calling loyalty is often fear of letting go. Fear that you'll be alone, that no one else will love you, that you're being too much. But holding on to someone who makes you feel small will never make you feel loved. It will only make you forget how powerful you truly are. Respect is the foundation of any healthy connection. Without it, love cannot thrive. It only survives in confusion, anxiety, and emotional depletion. You deserve more than just being tolerated. You deserve to be valued. Sometimes the need to be the understanding one comes from a deeper wound, the belief that you have to earn love by enduring pain. That if you just stay patient long enough, they'll wake up and realize how good you've been. But healthy love doesn't require you to prove your worth through suffering. It meets you where you are. It recognizes your boundaries as sacred, not as challenges to overcome. The belief that you have to fix someone to be worthy of love is a lie rooted in low self-worth. You don't exist to be someone's emotional rehabilitation center. You're allowed to walk away from anything that makes you feel smaller than you are. Your boundaries are not a burden. They are a filter. They protect your peace, your energy, and your dignity. When someone consistently violates them, no matter how much you care, it's not your job to keep explaining why it hurts. The right people won't need constant reminders. They will make the effort to respect your limits because they respect you. When you keep tolerating behavior that goes against your values, you're not keeping the peace. You're avoiding conflict at your own expense. And eventually that conflict builds within you. You start resenting them, and worse, you start resenting yourself for staying. But resentment is just unspoken truth in disguise. Being a kind person doesn't mean being a silent one. You can speak up without being harsh. You can leave without being cruel. You can protect your peace without apology. The idea that love means accepting someone no matter what is a dangerous myth. Love includes accountability. Love includes honesty. Love includes the ability to say, "This is not okay with me," and expect to be heard. If you're constantly swallowing your voice to keep someone close, you're not in love. You're in survival mode. And love should never feel like something you have to survive. It should feel like something that helps you thrive. You don't have to stay where you're constantly misunderstood just to prove you're patient. You don't have to endure being talked over, ignored, or dismissed to prove you're loyal. You don't have to keep showing up for someone who keeps letting you down just to prove you're strong. Your strength lies in your ability to walk away from what hurts you, even when your heart is still invested. That's real courage. That's real self-respect. You can care about someone deeply and still say, "This isn't healthy for me." Those two truths can coexist. And in honoring both, you reclaim your power. When you stop tolerating disrespect, you create space for something better. You stop wasting your energy on people who drain you and start attracting those who see you clearly. You begin to rebuild the parts of yourself you lost in trying to be the understanding one. You remember your voice, your worth, and your right to be treated with basic human decency. The moment you stop settling is the moment your life begins to shift. Because you're no longer operating from fear, you're operating from self-love. And from that place, everything changes. You rise, you heal, you choose you. Not because you're hard-hearted, but because you finally understand what your heart truly deserves. Confidence isn't about being the loudest person in the room, or having all the answers, or always saying the right thing. Real confidence is quiet, rooted, and undeniable. It's the energy you carry when you walk into a space knowing your value doesn't need to be announced to be felt. When you try too hard to be liked, to impress, or to prove your worth, you actually signal the opposite. You reveal insecurity, not strength. The need for constant validation becomes an emotional leak that drains your power. Instead of attracting respect, you attract conditional attention. Because the truth is, confidence doesn't chase, it attracts. It doesn't perform, it exists. It's not loud, it's certain. When you overcompensate for your self-doubt by trying to be perfect, overly agreeable, or endlessly accommodating, you start abandoning yourself piece by piece. You say yes when you want to say no, you laugh at things that don't feel right, you minimize your opinion so you don't rock the boat, you shrink, hoping that being easy to be around will make you irreplaceable. But the opposite happens. You fade into the background, and in trying to make yourself fit into someone else's idea of good enough, you forget how magnetic you are when you show up as yourself. Authenticity is far more attractive than perfection. People don't connect with masks, they connect with realness. Many people confuse attention with affection. Just because someone looks at you, compliments you, or even desires you doesn't mean they value you. Attention is cheap, it's everywhere. Value, on the other hand, is rare and deeply rooted. When you constantly seek validation through attention, you lose touch with your own compass. You start molding yourself based on external reactions instead of internal truths, and in doing so, you give away your power. You become dependent on how others see you, rather than grounded in how you see yourself. True confidence comes from the inside out, not the outside in. When you know who you are, approval becomes a bonus, not a necessity. Insecurity often shows up as overcompensation. You feel unsure of your worth, so you overshare, overtext, overexplain, or overplease. You try to fill the silence with words or gestures, thinking that your presence alone isn't enough, but it is. The more you chase reassurance, the more you communicate that you doubt yourself. And the irony is, people don't respect someone who doubts their own worth. They're drawn to those who carry it like truth. You don't need to earn someone's interest through effort. If they're truly meant for you, your presence will already be enough. The right people are drawn to energy that's grounded, not grasping. When you rely too much on someone else's interest to feel good about yourself, you give them control over your emotional climate. A good morning text makes you feel high. Silence leaves you spiraling. That kind of emotional dependency is exhausting, both for you and for them. It's not love, it's survival. And it puts pressure on the relationship that it was never meant to carry. You become reactive instead of receptive, anxious instead of aligned. But when your confidence is intact, you're not shaken by temporary distance or small changes in tone. You know your value isn't up for negotiation. You don't need reassurance every moment because your worth is consistent, not conditional. People often think they need to change themselves to be more attractive. But what's truly magnetic is being rooted in who you already are. When you know what you bring to the table, you stop trying to convince others to stay. You realize your presence is a gift, not a favor. You don't beg for love, chase attention, or plead for respect. You carry yourself with quiet dignity, and that alone shifts how people respond to you. Confidence doesn't mean arrogance. It means walking through life with the belief that your value isn't determined by someone else's inability to see it. That belief transforms how you show up, how you speak, and who you allow into your space. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparing yourself to others, especially in a world that constantly broadcasts highlight reels. You might start to believe you're not smart enough, beautiful enough, or interesting enough. But comparison is the thief of joy, and more importantly, the destroyer of confidence. You were never meant to be like anyone else. Your power is in your individuality. When you honor your unique voice, your quirks, your story, you become untouchable in your own lane. Confidence doesn't come from competing, it comes from owning who you are without apology. And when you do that, the right people won't just be impressed, they'll be inspired. Confidence also shows in how you handle rejection. When someone doesn't choose you, it's not always a reflection of your worth. Sometimes it's about timing, values, or simple incompatibility. But if your self-esteem is fragile, rejection can feel like a personal attack. You spiral, overanalyze, and wonder what you did wrong. But when you're grounded, rejection doesn't destroy you, it refines you. It becomes information, not an identity. You don't chase after someone who leaves. You don't beg for another chance. You simply acknowledge it and move forward, knowing that someone else's inability to see your value doesn't erase it. That's real strength. That's real confidence. The energy you project sets the tone for how others treat you. If you come from a place of lack, always needing to be chosen, you'll attract people who feed off that void. But when you come from wholeness, you create a standard. You don't tolerate crumbs because you know you deserve the feast. That kind of energy isn't demanding, it's clear. It doesn't manipulate, it magnetizes. People can feel the difference. They sense when someone is grounded in self-respect versus someone just trying to be liked. And when you truly respect yourself, you stop giving energy to those who don't. Ultimately, confidence is about being at home within yourself. It's knowing that no matter who comes or goes, you are still enough. It's the ability to enjoy your own company, speak your truth, and protect your peace without guilt. When you stop performing and start being, everything shifts. You become more honest in your relationships, more selective with your time, more peaceful in your heart. And from that place of self-assuredness, you attract not just attention, but depth, reciprocity, and lasting connection. Because the most powerful thing you can ever be is fully, unapologetically yourself.